thank you for joining us here. My name is John Sluice, Trust CPA. With us today, we've got Brian Ursu with Intentional Wealth Advisors. Got him here just asking some questions. We're going to dive in a little bit here on a book that he recently wrote, some advice that he has, and just some other things. So, Brian, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and maybe if you could just start off just telling us a little bit about yourself, experiences, who you are, maybe a little bit about Intentional Wealth Advisors, just all across the board.
Sure. I grew up in Traverse City, so it's nice to be home. And I've been a financial advisor for 32 years. And 16 years ago, started my own practice, which is kind of the culmination of the dream of what I would see for financial planning services. And that's Intentional Wealth Advisors. We're super happy doing that. We love our clients. We love the work that we're doing. And we're moving more towards comprehensive financial planning versus what we originally thought our job was investment managers. And that's part of it,
Okay.
But now financial planning has become a bigger part of that.
What do you mean when you say, so I hear you say conventional versus comprehensive. What do you mean when you say that?
So a comprehensive financial plan is going to look at really all aspects of a person's financial, picture, right? And most often people are looking at what does my retirement look like? What would that be? Or can I put my kids through college, or what would that look like? What do I need to do to make this vision a reality? And so looking at all aspects, so that would be their employer-sponsored retirement plan, their benefits at work, life insurance, investments, their estate plan, their legacy plan, all of it combined into one picture.
Very nice. And then, and you typically work with individuals and large corporations. Who do you typically work with? Families?
We work with a select group of families primarily, and we find that we work with a lot of people just before retirement and then after retirement. And then we've worked with a number of suddenly single women that either through death or divorce find themselves in a situation where my husband took care of all of those things, and now I don't know what I should be doing, and so we can help and counsel them.
Wow, that's very good. Okay. Well, one thing that I know of Brian here, and I want to kind of ask his thoughts on it, is Brian is an absolute avid reader. I love reading as well. Nowhere near close to Brian. I mean, my goal is to get like 25 to 26 books a year, and I think I'm doing pretty good at that. Brian, what's your goal for this year?
This year I backed it down to 52, so a book a week. But last year was a record year. Go figure, during a pandemic, I read a little more. So 60 books for the year. And I was coming in at 59, and I thought, I can read one more, and got it in under the wire.
The 60 is, and these aren't little books that he's reading either. It's fun watching. He's on Goodreads, so I get to see kind of the different books you're reading and picking and choosing. And they're not small, short little ones either, so it's fun. But on that, I mean, you obviously love to read. You love to share knowledge. That's one thing that Brian and I talk a lot about and enjoy sharing things on. But specifically here, one of the reasons I asked him to be involved here today is because you are also an author.
Yeah.
So we have an author amongst us, which is exciting and different. And can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? We've got the book sitting here right now. So the book is Now What? A Practical Guide to Figuring Out Your Financial Future. We'll have links to it below here and a few other things. I'm doing shameless plug here for Brian, and I'll admit it was me, not Brian here on this. But so that's out there. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the book. What is it? What brought you there, etc.
So the way that it started is our daughter went from being a poverty level student in college eating ramen noodles to a software engineer in Silicon Valley making a lot of money, and her job offer was 7 pages long, and she needed me to help so she could understand what it was that they were offering and the benefits. And so she asked, what should I read to get in preparation for starting my financial life? And so I gave her the normal books that I would normally recommend to people that ask that question. And she read them and came back and said, these are for people that are so much further along in their career. You should write it. You can write. And I thought, well, okay, challenge accepted. I did what any good dad would do, and I wrote the book. And as I was writing it, the outline came together really easy, but the motivation was, it occurred to me, everything that I have up here that I've shared with my clients, I've never shared with my own kids. If I got hit by a truck, everything that I have would not be passed to them. And so that motivation of, it's really a love note or a message to my kids. This is, if you know everything in here, you're going to be doing just fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
And so that was the motivation to continue and plot on. And then fortunately got a publisher that agreed with the whole message.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've read it and loved it. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I was going through and highlighting different sections and thinking, okay, hey, this applies here or this applies there. And it is very practical, and it's something that we welcomed that opportunity to even the next week after reading it, I was sitting in a meeting and said, well, yeah, there was this idea or that idea, and how practical this is.
Well, thank you. And it was designed to be very conversational, not academic. So very approachable and not, nobody wants to read a book about finance. I mean, nobody. So it has to be somewhat engaging.
But for the rest of everyone listening here, yes. I mean, the target audience on this is for, well, who is the target audience?
So would be millennials and Gen Z primarily, but anybody that's becoming financially aware for the first time. And so we find that secondary market with suddenly single women. So I should know all this stuff and I don't. And then the boomer parents of these millennial and Gen Z kids who have no shortage of guilt for how financially unprepared their grown children are for everything that they're going to encounter. And so this is a lifeline for them to toss out to their grown kids.
Yeah, and I think a lot of individuals that are watching this right now are probably going to fit into that category there, where this may not necessarily be for you, but you could use it for your kids or your grandkids or otherwise. And I say not necessarily because I joke, because my wife Lisa read this and she said after reading it she finally understands some of what I was actually talking about. And so we as baby boomers or as others can also relate to it and say we're buying it for the grandkids, but really read into it a little bit and kind of understand it a little bit. So when you do leave some of these meetings and where you are nodding and smiling and pretend to understand that it does very clearly lay out a lot of different things within the financial world. So it is a great read. I highly recommend it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the shameless plug.
So did you have any surprises that as you were writing this? So if I were to get down into it a little bit of the actual practical side of writing this, is there any so Brian the author, any surprises?
None. I mean, I'm pretty disciplined, so I would set my alarm, get up at 4:45, and write until close to 6 every morning. So I wasn't.
That's AM, by the way.
Yeah, I wasn't stealing time from the business or from my clients. It was, just early rising. I loved that discipline, and I loved the process. Cup of coffee, warm fire, and the tablet, and then just go. What I did find surprising is it took as long to bring the manuscript to a finished product. It took longer than it did to write it.
Okay.
So I'd never done this before, and I thought, well, the publisher's going to pick it up, and then they just run with it. No, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made: the cover, the design, the graphics, the font, the margins, the paper, everything. So it's a long process, and that's what I was not prepared for.
Interesting. Any secrets any juicy secrets that you had inside of that you could look back and say I had no idea, I can't imagine this, whether it's any secrets like that?
The biggest surprise in that whole thing is submitting a manuscript to publishers and agents. I thought you just send it in an envelope or digitally. No, you have to really make the case for the book and do their work for them in terms of who are the comps, who's the target market, what's the price point. And I'm thinking, really, this is my job?
Yeah, that's what you should be doing.
So that was really a surprise.
Interesting. And have you had any stories that people have read through this now and come back to you and say, Brian, thanks so much for giving this. This led into something else. Any?
I got a really super nice email from a gentleman who's raising 2 teenage daughters, and he said that he loved the book. He bought a copy for each of his daughters, and they're working on it together. That warms my heart like nothing. Yeah. And then I had a financial advisor that is also a professor I think in Nebraska somewhere, that said that the required course book was $400 for his course. That's what the college said, and he said he prefers ours, and so he uses ours with his
nice.
class. Yeah, so those are two stories that I thought were
that's huge.
really kind of nice.
And anyone, if you work with me, I get absolutely passionate, excited about when we start talking about having kids save early, the college kids, and I'll bring up the save now versus later screenshot, which many of you I've already forwarded to. So sharing this knowledge earlier than later is so important and so key, if you will. And so I was excited about reading this too, so I appreciate you putting this out too. But well, thank you again. And we've been talking a lot about the book here, but you're not just doing the book as well. I mean, I know one other thing that I've seen is, because we have mutual clients that work together, is what you're calling Coffee Talks with Brian Ursu. What's that? And explain that a little bit.
So it is an idea that I had in a way to communicate with our clients, or anybody really, that is interested in getting a market update. We do them every other week on Wednesday. The next one is coming up. But every other week, it's designed to be 10 to 15 minutes, a short synopsis of everything that's going on and what they need to know about that. And so early on, we covered the election, we covered the pandemic, we covered, all kinds of the economic outlook and the stock market gyrations. And so it's just a way for us to give our spin on things, to let people know what it is that we're seeing and what we're worried about, where we see the opportunities, and do it in a brief, concise, informal manner. Right. But doing it on Zoom is totally foreign. Video is foreign to me. So I can talk in front of hundreds of people in a live group, that's comfortable. But staring at the little blue dot on the top of my monitor, that's really unnerving to me, and it's hard. So I'm getting better at doing it, and I'll keep trying. We are all in different spots than we were even a year and a half ago. This video here, we wouldn't have imagined doing this as an accountant here, sitting here doing these. And I think similar is it's trying to share information for you, the audience, with what we're seeing, what we're doing, and what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Like a good example, even the last one you had was you were talking a little bit about GameStop.
Yeah.
And it's something that you're not necessarily going to call up your advisor to say, hey, what do you think about the GameStop? But at the same time, you then can watch and hear and see, what is he thinking about it? And you don't feel bad about asking for it, but you're getting to hear the information.
Yeah, and able to break it down in the financial news channels are going to speak really over everybody. And so, yeah, I heard about it. I knew that something was going on, but we're able to break it down at a very fundamental level so that everybody has a working knowledge of what the situation was and how it relates, if any, to their situation. But that was more of a, I don't know, curiosity, like, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. It was a.
There were good guys, bad guys. A lot of people made money.
Yeah.
Some lost money.
That was interesting, yeah. And so, a lot of you watching too are business owners as well. And so you've all had to adapt and think through what you did and how you pivoted. We've had other videos where we had other business owners that pivoted inside of COVID and as a result of that. And it's amazing hearing some of these stories that are out there of what we've done as business owners and as individuals here in Northern Michigan that are just responding. And those are the heartwarming things that you say that, yeah, we are all individuals here at the end of the day, and we're doing our best to try to figure out how we move forward. And so,
yeah, and I do sense that there is some Zoom fatigue and virtual meeting fatigue, and that's why we intentionally keep them, pretty brief.
Yeah, they're 10, 15 minutes. I know I've missed a few of them because by the time I remember that they're on, I'm like, oh man, I missed that one. And then you get all mad because you missed it. And they are good, and so I would also recommend those as well. So it has been fun to see. And what have you learned most out of doing that?
I've learned it challenges me to understand exactly what's going on and be able to consolidate all that information in a short message. And so writing the book and editing the book was kind of the same idea. I have vast store of knowledge, but nobody wants to listen to 60 minutes of what happened last week. So you have to concisely bring it down, and I usually do that at 8 in the morning, and I force myself, and I use a yellow legal pad, and it's usually 7 or 8 pages of handwritten notes, and then I just kind of go off of that. So forcing everything and then putting it in a logical flow. I don't know. It's been fun and it's challenging.
It's very hard to do that. I mean, that's one thing that we really try to do as well, which is try to get information very concise and clean. I mean, I know that's one thing that we hear a lot from the packages and everything that we do is, well, it's so easy and clean to follow. And we
Right.
do make a very good point or clear point to do that because we understand how easily something blows up.
Right.
We joke it's very easy for us to put out a 6-page asterisk-filled explanation of why you should save for a 401k. I joke I tried to at the beginning of this year put out a year-end planner on what they should do, and I wanted to do save for retirement. That's all I wanted, but then we had to asterisk, well, retirement is 401k. Oh, but don't forget about the 401k, put the 403b in. And what about the 407 and the 406s? And it quickly rolls out to all those things where the detailed analytical accountants and financial advisors in the world want to have absolutely everything there.
Yeah.
Balanced with getting the information out to individuals. So less is more so often
So
than not.
one of the inspirations for that was Peter Lynch wrote a couple books, and I read both of them, and he was the manager of Fidelity Magellan at the most successful period of time. He, in the book, said, if you can explain your concept using a piece of paper and a crayon to a 5th grader, then you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. And so that's kind of like, that's the model.
Okay.
Not to dumb it down, but you really, it takes hard work to get it to decipherable,
Clear and concise.
Clear and
versus
concise.
It's not dumbed down, it's clear and concise.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between that. So,
Yep.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and that's a little bit, I've seen how the role you've taken with your clients too, kind of shifting into the financial advisor of Brian, if you will, of who you are at Intentional Wealth. I mean, the name in and of itself, Intentional Wealth Advisors. I mean, you are very intentional about it and you're trying to make that very forefront with who you are. I mean, maybe can you talk a little bit about your investing theory and a little bit about Intentional Wealth Advisors and on all that?
Yeah, and so there's 2 meanings to the intentional wealth
Okay.
moniker. One of them is we have a very intentional process of how we manage that, and it's based on everything that's going on right now in the world, and we want to tactically be in position and navigate as smoothly as possible. So that fable of the tortoise and the hare, we're going to be the tortoise. We're never going to be the hare. Mm-hmm. So the first 10 years of my career, I tried to be the hare. Didn't work, and it's easier, and you're getting better outcomes being the tortoise. So that's our focus. But the other is we want to help encourage our clients to live lives with intention. So unfortunately, most people, their primary objective is to arrive at death as safely as possible. And I think that that's really short-sighted. There's so many, even during this period of time where we're hunkered down and meeting here, there's so many blessings out there, and to help people see those blessings and choose a path intentionally, not let things happen to them, but choose differently, that's the secondary meaning of intentional wealth.
I love it. I love that. And I mean, we get asked a lot from our clients and from you of, well, what advisor should we use? Who should we use? Who not? And I've told all of you, I said, well, it depends. There are many good out there. And I say this with Brian right next to me.
Yeah.
And I think he would probably say the same thing about CPAs and others. And is that there's not one particular one that's the best. You got to find the right fit for who you are and what you're looking for. Why we have Brian here, why we're going to have other ones on these,
Yeah.
is that we're going to try to bring it. And I do see absolutely, Brian, that you bring that intentional side of things and that.
I appreciate that, and we promise that anybody that comes to us, if it's not a right fit, and we've been very good about declaring who it is that we are and how we can help people, if they're not going to be a good fit, we find them a good fit because we have good relationships with other advisors in town, and we want them to be happy.
Yeah, I say the same thing. It's like I'll give you names of CPAs of who to go to and who not to go, because at the end of the day, it's the relationship that is
Yeah.
so important, and you got to be able to have that there. So.
And feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I joke that generally speaking, you've got your priest and you've got your accountant, and the financial advisors, we tend to know more.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you paying attention here. We thank you for making it all the way through this video. Please give either ourselves a call or give Brian a call over at Intentional Wealth Advisors. We value your relationship and look forward to coming and talking to you again in the future. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.